Hey guys, tonight we are drifting back, way back, to a time before dryers, before pockets, before even the concept of laundry had ever troubled a human mind. We're tracing the origins of the most humble of substances, the silent witness to all of human civilization, lint. You are standing on a vast, windswept grassland, the air crisp and carrying the musky scent of megafauna. A woolly mammoth, a creature of such immense scale it seems like a walking mountain, lumbers past, its shaggy coat catching on the rough bark of a gnarled pine. A tuft of coarse, reddish-brown hair snags, pulls, and finally detaches, left to be tossed by the wind. This is the protolint, the primordial fuzz of a world yet to be woven. It's a world where survival is a daily, brutal lottery, and you probably won't survive the winter, let alone the next predator that catches your scent on the breeze. But that tiny, discarded tuft of mammoth hair, that will outlast you. It will be here long after your bones have returned to the earth, a testament to the fact that even the grandest creatures leave behind nothing but fragments, forgotten fluff in the great pocket of time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're there, feel free to drop a comment down below. Let me know where in the world you're listening from and what the local time is. It's always fascinating to see this community spanning the globe, all of us united by a need for a good story to drift off to. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are not just an observer in this ancient scene, you are a part of it. You feel the coarse, hand-sewn animal hides wrapped around your shoulders, not for fashion, but for a desperate, clawing need for warmth. Every fiber of your being is attuned to survival, and you notice everything. You notice the tracks in the mud, the shape of the clouds, the distant call of a bird, and you notice the soft, matted collections of fur in the sheltered crevices of the cave you call home. This isn't lint to you, not yet. It's just a stuffed detritus, the shed skin of the world. It gathers in the corners where the wind doesn't reach, a silent accumulation of life that was and is no more. You might idly run your fingers through it, this unintentional felt of wolf, deer, and hare, and in that moment, you are perhaps the first being to ever interact with lint without any intention of cleaning it up. Historians and anthropologists still argue whether these early accumulations were seen as mere dirt, or if they held some nascent, symbolic significance, a tangible reminder of the animals that provided food and clothing. This is the true dawn of fuzz, a world operating on a geological and biological time scale. The main actors aren't humans, but fibers themselves. Plant fibers from decaying grasses and bark, animal fibers from shedding coats and molting feathers. They are liberated from their hosts by friction, by weather, by the simple passage of time. You can see them drifting on the air currents, tiny, almost invisible astronauts on the wind, before gravity eventually claims them, depositing them in quiet eddies and sheltered hollows. It's a slow, patient process, the planet's first and most passive form of textile production. There's a quirky, almost absurd thought experiment some fringe researchers propose, that if you could gather all the prehistoric lint from a single square mile of land over a millennium, you could theoretically reconstruct the entire ecosystem from the DNA trapped within it. A mammoth lint museum, a saber-toothed tiger hairball. The idea is as charming as it is utterly, logistically impossible, a testament to the wild theories that bloom around the most mundane of subjects. You move through this world, and your hide clothing constantly sheds its own microscopic particles. You are a walking lint generator. Even now, as you trudge back to your shelter after a long day, you scrape against a rocky outcrop, and a few precious fibers from your garment are left behind. This is the economy of the ancient world. Everything is borrowed, everything is lost, everything is transferred. The line between a useful fiber and a worthless piece of lint is impossibly thin. A stray tuft of mammoth wool caught on a branch might be spotted by a keen eye and collected, its insulation properties too valuable to waste. That same tuft, if trodden into the mud and mixed with pine needles, becomes irrelevant, just part of the background noise of the earth. There is no word for it. This substance, it simply is. It is the background static of a natural world, the gentle, accumulating dust of existence, waiting in the wings of history for its moment to finally be recognized, collected, and eventually ignored once more. It is the most patient storyteller there is, and its tale is only just beginning. The rhythm of your life changes from the nomadic, day-to-day survival of the hunter-gatherer to the settled, cyclical patterns of the early agriculturalist. You are part of a community now, living in mud brick homes, your world defined by the sowing and the reaping. And with this new stability comes a new technology, that will forever alter human society and, consequently, the very nature of lint itself, the loom. You are no longer just occasionally noticing stray fibers. You are now actively involved in their creation. The air inside your dwelling is thick with a fine, floating dust, a mixture of dried earth, smoke from the central fire, and millions of microscopic threads shed from the flax plants you are painstakingly processing. You spend your days beating the stems to separate the fibrous inner bark, a process called scutching, then pulling the strands through a comb-like tool to align them for spinning. With every motion, a cloud of tiny, unwanted fibers is released into the air, settling on your skin, in your hair, on every flat surface. This isn't the accidental lint of the wild. This is industrial-grade fuzz, the direct and unavoidable byproduct of humanity's first foray into mass production. You sit at a simple, vertical loom, its warp threads taut and waiting. Your fingers, now calloused and skilled, guide the weft thread back and forth. The shuttle a familiar weight in your palm. With each pass, friction is created. The warp threads rub against each other. The weft thread sheds tiny fibrils, and the rough-hewn wooden frame of the loom itself scrapes against the fibers. It is a constant, gentle abrasion, a microscopic sandstorm of textile debris. This is the moment lint is formally born as a concept. It is no longer just random environmental fluff. It is the specific waste product of a specific process. It accumulates at the base of the loom in a soft, grayish pile. This pile has a name now, in your language. It is the pesa, the kakum, the stuff we sweep up after weaving. It is a nuisance, but a familiar one, a sign of productive work. Historians still argue whether these early weavers saw this accumulation as purely a waste product, or if they had discovered some rudimentary uses for it, perhaps as a fire starter, or a crude stuffing for bedding, a theory supported by the discovery of lint-filled mats in some ancient settlements. The process of creating cloth is long, arduous, and valued beyond almost anything else. A single garment represents weeks, sometimes months, of labor. Because of this, nothing is wasted. The larger clumps of fibers, the failed threads, the bigger scraps of cut cloth, all are carefully collected and stored. But the lint, the finest, most useless dust, is another matter. It is the one thing that truly cannot be salvaged. You sweep it up from the hard-packed earthen floor and discard it outside the door, where the wind eventually claims it. But even in its disposal, it finds a purpose. There's a quirky, almost poetic, theory proposed by a few textile archaeologists that this discarded lint, blown across the landscape and settling into the soil, may have actually improved the aeration and moisture retention of early agricultural fields surrounding settlements. Our ancestors, in their quest for clothing, might have accidentally been fertilizing their crops with the very waste of their looms. A perfect, unconscious cycle of fiber and food. You see this new relationship with fibers everywhere in your settled life. The basket weaver's hands are coated in a fine dust from the reeds they split and weave. The rope maker twisting hemp fibers into thick cords creates a haze of particulate around their workspace. Even the simple act of putting on and taking off your new woven tunic creates a small storm of shed threads. For the first time, humans are living in a world saturated with their own manufactured detritus. You are breathing it in. You can taste it on the air, a dry, slightly earthy flavor that is the taste of civilization itself. At night, as you lie on your sleeping mat, you might watch motes of this lint dust dancing in the single shaft of moonlight piercing the smoke hole in your roof. They are the ghosts of your daily labor, the invisible price of being clothed. And as your eyes grow heavy, the gentle rhythmic sound of a spindle whorl spinning somewhere in the village becomes the world's first white noise machine, a hypnotic drone accompanying the silent fall of history's first true lint settling into the corners of a world slowly weaving itself together. The rhythmic clacking of the loom fades, replaced by the cacophonous, vibrant din of a Roman city street. The air you breathe now is different, thick with the scent of baking bread, smoking incense, spices from distant lands, and underlying it all, the unmistakable, pungent odor of ammonia. You are no longer a weaver in a quiet hut. You are a citizen of an empire, and your toga, the symbol of your civility, has acquired a stain from last night's rather overzealous symposium. It is not a task for the home. This is a job for the fullo, the laundryman. You find yourself descending a set of steps into a bustling phalanaka, a subterranean world of hygiene that is anything but hygienic by our modern standards. The room is humid, steamy, and the ammonia smell is so potent it makes your eyes water. In large shallow vats, men, usually slaves, are stomping on piles of soiled garments, their knees pumping up and down as they tread the cloth in a mixture of water and what the Romans politely called lodium, the collected urine from public cesspools and pots, placed on street corners for this very purpose. The urine, left to ferment for weeks, is a powerful source of ammonia, a natural degreaser that breaks down the oils and dirt in the woolen togas and tunics. And as these men tread, their feet churning the foul-smelling soup, the cloth undergoes a violent abrasion. It is this process, this brutal mechanical assault combined with chemical cleaning, that liberates an incredible amount of lint. You can see it swirling in the vats, a grayish-brown froth of fibers rising to the surface like some horrible textile soup scum. This is lint of a different character altogether. It is not the gentle dust of the loom but a greasy, urine-soaked slurry of filth and fiber. The fullo would periodically skim this foul slurry from the top of the vats. Historians still argue whether this collected sodden lint muck was simply discarded, or in the ruthless efficiency of the Roman economy found some further degrading use, perhaps as a crude insulation, or packing material, a theory that adds a whole new layer of horror to Roman shipping crates. After the treading, the garments were rinsed and then taken to a second area to be brushed and raised. Here, a worker would take a special comb made from the prickly heads of teasel plants and meticulously card the surface of the damp wool, raising the nap to make it feel softer and look fuller. This process, of course, generated another storm of lint, finer, drier, and now free of its urine bath. It floats in the air of the Phalanaka, catching the light from the lamps, a glittering galaxy of discarded fiber that you and the workers are constantly breathing in. There's a wonderfully quirky and fringe theory that the famously deep resonant voices of some Roman orators might not have been a gift from the gods, but a form of occupational asthma Fuller's lung, caused by a lifetime of inhaling this particulate-laden air, their vocal cords permanently altered by the endless mist of wool dust and ammonia fumes. Imagine history's greatest speeches delivered in a voice raspy from inhaled lint. You leave the Phalanaka, your toga now impeccably clean, smelling faintly of the clay used to whiten it, and, if you're imagining very hard, just a ghost of that infamous lodium. But the journey of Roman lint is not over. As you walk the streets, you see it everywhere. It clings to the sandals of the fullo as he goes about his business. It gathers in the corners of the vast public baths, washed off the bodies of bathers and forming a sodden, multicolored mush at the edges of the pools. It escapes from the baskets of clothes, being delivered and settles into the grooves between the cobblestones. The Romans, masters of engineering and order, had an entire class of waste they couldn't quite engineer away. This lint was a testament to their civilization, a byproduct of their sophisticated clothing, their elaborate cleaning rituals, and their vast urban density. It was the fluff of the forum, the detritus of the divine empire forever being swept away by slaves, only to settle again moments later, a silent persistent echo of the treader's vats, reminding everyone that even the mightiest civilization is on some level just shedding its skin. The raucous, ammonia-scented world of the Roman Phalanaka dissolves, the shouts of the treaders fading into a profound, echoing silence. The air you breathe now is cool, still, and carries the faint, familiar scent of stone, beeswax, and slow-burning tallow. The urban din is replaced by the distant, melodic cadence of Gregorian chant, a hypnotic drone that seems to vibrate through the very flagstones beneath your feet. You are in the scriptorium of a medieval monastery, a long, vaulted room, where the only light comes from the flickering flames of a few carefully tended candles and the weak sun straining through thick glass windows. Here, in this house of devotion and meticulous order, lint finds a new, unexpected purpose. It is no longer a waste product to be discarded or a nuisance to be swept away. It is a resource, however humble, to be conserved and sanctified. Your world is one of ritual and repetition. The monastic day is divided into the Opus Dei, the work of God, and the Opus Manuum, the work of the hands. And it is during this manual labor that lint is given its sacred due. After the sparse meals, after the copying of sacred texts, there is the task of maintaining the monastery itself. This includes the care of the habits, the rough, woolen robes worn by every brother. As they are mended, brushed, and folded, they shed. In the quiet of the dormitory or the laundry yard, a monk might be seen with a small, carved wooden box, patiently collecting the soft gray fuzz that accumulates from the robes. This is not a chore. It is an act of pious frugality, a recognition that nothing in God's creation is truly without use. Historians still argue whether this practice was born purely of extreme necessity, especially in poorer, more isolated orders, or if it held a deeper symbolic meaning, a way of physically gathering the shed material of a life of humility and weaving it back into the divine service. The collected lint, soft and slightly greasy from the wool's natural lanolin, has one primary, vital purpose. It becomes the core of candle wicks. You might be tasked with this very duty, sitting on a low stool, patiently rolling the gathered lint between your fingers, twisting it into thin, sturdy strings. These lint wicks are then dipped into vats of rendered animal fat tallow or, on rare and special occasions, precious beeswax. The resulting candles are the lifeblood of the monastic schedule. They allow for prayers before dawn and studies long after dusk. Their light illuminates the painstakingly illustrated manuscripts, each stroke of the quill act of devotion guided by the gentle, flickering flame of a wick made from the monastery's own shed clothing. There's a wonderfully quirky and fringe idea proposed by a few medievalists that the specific composition of this lint, a blend of wolfskin cells, and perhaps even stray herbal residues from the infirmary, might have subtly altered the burn quality and scent of the candles, creating a unique olfactory signature for each monastery, a holy aroma of piety and practicality. You move through the stone corridors, your own habit whispering against the cold walls. Every activity here generates its own specific type of lint. The scribe in the scriptorium creates a fine, paper dust lint from scraping parchment. The baker in the kitchens is covered in a fine flour dust that mingles with the fibers of his robe. The herbalist in the infirmary sheds tiny particles of dried mint and yarrow. All of it, in its own way, is part of the monastery's ecosystem. But the wool lint is the most valued. It is a tangible product of their chosen poverty and simplicity. The gentle glow of the candle you carry is not just fire. It is transformed substance. It is the shed fiber of 100 prayers, the lost threads of countless hours of meditation, now given a new voice as light and warmth. The flame sputters slightly, and you gently tilt the candle, watching the light play on the ancient stones. In this silent, contemplative space, even the most mundane detritus is elevated, a silent testament to the belief that everything, even the dust we shed, can be offered up and made holy. The profound, sacred silence of the monastery slowly recedes, like a tide pulling back from the shore of your consciousness. The hypnotic Gregorian chants are replaced by a different, more frantic rhythm, the sound of coins clinking, the scratch of quills on parchment, and the low, grumbling murmur of a populace being measured, counted, and taxed. The scent of beeswax and stone gives way to the smell of ink, sweat, and the damp wool of crowded courtiers. You are no longer in a house of God, but in the court of a king, and the subject of discussion is not salvation, but revenue. The year is 17-something, in a European kingdom not unlike France or England, and the royal treasury, perennially drained by war and extravagance, is desperate for new sources of income, and in a moment of either bureaucratic genius or sheer absurdist madness, a minister SI falls upon the most humble of substances, the lint collected in the bottoms of household laundry baskets. This is the era of the mercantilist state, where a nation's wealth is measured in its accumulation of tangible goods, and where no potential resource, no matter how insignificant, escapes the notice of the crown's accountants. The proposal is laid before the king, a tax on household lint collection. The logic, in its own twisted way, is impeccable. Every household generates lint. It is a universal byproduct of civilized life. Therefore, it represents a universal tax base. A royal edict is drafted, proclaiming that all subjects of the crown are required to save the lint collected from their drying lines, their brushing cloths, and their own clothing. This saved lint, to be weighed on official scales at quarterly intervals, would be subject to the lint duty, a tax payable either in kind, by surrendering a portion of the lint itself, or in coin based on its weight. Historians still argue whether this was a serious, if desperate, policy proposal from a financially strapped minister, or an elaborate piece of political satire aimed at mocking the crown's endless hunger for new taxes. The surviving documents are frustratingly opaque, written in the dry, legalistic language of the court, leaving their true intent shrouded in the fog of time. The imagined mechanics of such a tax are a bureaucratic nightmare come to life. You can picture the royal lint collectors, men with terribly stuffy noses and impeccably clean uniforms, going from door to door with their small, brass official scales. They would demand to see the household's lint jar, scrutinizing the contents for adulteration, a sneaky addition of fireplace ash, or garden soil to increase the weight. The potential for corruption is staggering. A corrupt collector could overlook a full jar for a bribe. A ruthless one could falsely accuse a family of lint fraud. There's a wonderfully quirky and fringe theory, found in the margins of a satirical pamphlet of the era, that a black market for premium lint would have inevitably sprung up, A wealthy nobleman too lazy or too proud to collect his own fuzz might pay a hefty sum for a bag of particularly fine, soft lint, perhaps from the brushing of only the most expensive Venetian velvets, to meet his quarterly quota in style, creating a bizarre shadow economy of illicit fluff. The public outcry, as one might imagine, would have been immediate and vehement. It's one thing to tax land, or trade, or even windows, but to tax the very dust of one's clothing. It represented a level of governmental intrusion into the private, mundane sphere of life that was utterly unprecedented. Pamphleteers and coffeehouse wits would have had a field day. You can almost hear the jokes. His Majesty's government now claims a royal share of the air we breathe and the fuzz we shed. The tax, if it was ever seriously considered, was likely dead on arrival, a victim of its own sublime ridiculousness. It becomes a ghost in the ledger books of history, a testament to the lengths to which a state will go when it's broke, and a reminder that no aspect of daily life is safe from the grasping hand of a creative taxman. The proposal vanishes, but the story lingers, a whispered joke in taverns, a symbol of ultimate bureaucratic overreach, and as you lie there, you can almost feel the weight of an imaginary tax on the lint in your own pockets, a humorous, historical phantom limb of government intrusion. The grandiose, absurd specter of royal lint collectors fades, their brass scales dissolving into the more intimate, cramped space of an 18th century garret room. The air is thick, with the smell of cheap tallow smoke, stale beer, and the faint, metallic tang of ink. The sounds of courtly intrigue are replaced by the frantic scratching of a quill and the soft, rhythmic sigh of someone trying very hard not to be heard. You are not a nobleman or a tax collector. You are someone with secrets, someone with thoughts too dangerous or too personal for the expensive, traceable paper that is both scarce and subject to prying eyes. Your hands, stained with ink and grime, are not weaving cloth or brushing a fine coat. They are engaged in a far more peculiar task. You are meticulously gathering the lint from the depths of your own pockets, compressing it into a small, firm tablet, and preparing to use it as a writing surface. This is the world of the pocket lint diary, a testament to human ingenuity and the desperate, universal need to record one's existence. Paper, especially for the common person, is a luxury. It is taxed, it is monitored, and it can be easily discovered. But lint is invisible. It is the forgotten debris of daily life, accumulating in the seams and corners of waistcoats and breeches, without anyone ever noticing. Your daily routine now includes a new ritual, the careful harvesting of this material. You turn your pockets inside out, scraping the soft, matted gray felt into a small pile on your rough-hewn table. You might mix it with a drop of precious water, or a dab of paste stolen from the bookbinder's workshop. Then press it firmly between two flat stones or simply with the heel of your hand. The result is a small, slightly crumbly, but surprisingly durable tablet. It will never hold the fine lines of proper paper, but for a few hurried words, a sketch, a coded message, or a line of forbidden poetry, it will suffice. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice among dissidents and the poor, or merely the eccentric behavior of a few documented individuals. Their strange diaries preserved more for their bizarre medium than their content. The act of writing on lint is a lesson in frustration and delicate control. Your quill must be sharp, your ink thick, and your hand exceedingly light. Too much pressure and the point of the quill digs into the soft, compressed fibers, tearing the makeshift page. The ink bleeds, spiderwebbing through the felted material, blurring the words into obscurity. You learn to write in a tiny, cramped script, each letter a miniature battle against the reluctant canvas. These are not journals for long, flowing prose. They are for secrets, for ledgers of debt, for the names of loved ones, for things that must be recorded and then easily destroyed. A pocket lint diary can be hidden anywhere in a hole in the wall, sewn into a hem, even carried right back in the pocket from whence it came. And if danger approaches, its destruction is simple and total. A single touch to the candle's flame, and it is gone, consumed without a trace, leaving behind nothing but a brief acrid smell that is indistinguishable from any other burning dust. There is a wonderfully quirky and fringe theory, proposed by a few material historians, that the very composition of these lint tablets could act as a unique fingerprint. The lint from a sailor's pocket might contain traces of salt, tobacco, and exotic spices, while a carpenter's might be infused with sawdust and linseed oil. A modern historian, were they to find such a tablet, could potentially analyze its particulate makeup, and not just read the words, but literally smell the life of the person who wrote them, reconstructing their trade and travels from the environmental history trapped within the fuzz. It's a romantic notion, that a man's world could be perfectly preserved in the dust of his pockets. You finish your entry, a single line of anguish or hope, and you blow gently on the surface to dry the ink. You then hide the tiny, fuzzy tablet away, a secret known only to you, and the fabric of your clothes. In an age of increasing surveillance and control, your most private thoughts are entrusted to the most public of wastes. The lint, once an irrelevant byproduct of your daily life, has become your confidant, your archivist, your co-conspirator. It is the perfect metaphor for the human spirit itself, finding a voice in the most unexpected places, using the discarded and the overlooked to assert that, even in the smallest, dustiest corners of existence, our stories matter and will be told. The clandestine, inky world of the pocket lint diary dissolves, the acrid smell of its potential destruction giving way to a heavy, cloying perfume of lilies, beeswax, and camphor. The cramped garret is replaced by the oppressive, velvet-draped parlor of a Victorian home, where the curtains are perpetually drawn and the clocks have all been stopped at the precise moment of a loved one's passing. The 18th century's pragmatic secrecy has been supplanted by the 19th century's elaborate, theatrical grief, and in this world of deep, performative mourning, lint undergoes its most bizarre and poignant transformation yet. It is no longer a tool for secrets or a waste to be taxed. It is a sacred relic. You are not a dissident scribbler. You are a bereaved widow, a grieving child, and in your trembling hands, you hold a beautifully crafted locket. But it does not contain a painted miniature or a curl of hair. It holds a small, carefully arranged tuft of lint, meticulously collected from the clothing of the recently departed. This is the height of the Victorian cult of mourning, a period where death was not hidden away but embraced, ritualized, and commodified. The loss of a husband, a child, a parent dictated a strict and lengthy set of social rules-specific black clothing worn for prescribed periods of time. Full mourning, half mourning, the withdrawal from society, and the creation of mementos mori, objects to remember the dead, and for those who could not afford a piece of jewelry containing a loved one, as hair, the most common keepsake, for those who sought an even more intimate, mundane connection. There was the lint locket. The process was one of devotion. In the days following the death, as the deceased's personal effects were being sorted, you would take their favorite waistcoat, their most worn dress, and with a pair of tweezers, you would carefully, tenderly, extract the lint from the pockets, the cuffs, the seams. Historians still argue whether this practice was a widespread if unspoken tradition among the poorer and middle classes or a symptom of a more extreme pathological grief. Captured in a few isolated cases, its prevalence lost to time because of the fragile and private nature of the objects themselves. This was not the generic lint of a household. This was their lint. It was a tangible collection of their essence, a physical archive of their daily life. Trapped within those soft, gray fibers were microscopic particles of their skin, traces of the tobacco they smoked, the powder they used, the dust from their workplace, perhaps even a stray hair. To wear a locket containing this substance was to keep them literally close to your heart, to carry the very dust they shed in life against your skin. It was the ultimate symbol of intimacy, far more personal than a lock of hair, which could be cut from anyone's head. This was a material that had been with them, unseen, through every moment of their existence. There's a wonderfully quirky, albeit macabre, fringe theory proposed by some social historians that the specific texture and composition of a person's lint could, in a way, be read by the bereaved. The coarse, gritty lint from a carpenter's pocket felt different from the fine, powdery lint from a seamstress's apron, creating a tactile memory map of the deceased's life and work. The ritual of collection was a final act of care, a way to delay the inevitable clearing out of their belongings. As you sat in the quiet, shuttered room, picking through the fabric that still carried their scent, each tiny tuft of lint was a memory. This one from the pocket where he kept his watch. This one from the cuff that was always frayed because he had a habit of leaning on his desk. The act was meditative, a way to process the immense loss by focusing on the smallest, most insignificant details of their existence. The resulting locket was not meant for public display. It was a private solace, a secret between you and the departed. To an outsider, it would appear to hold nothing but dirt. But to you, it held a universe. It was a monument to the everyday, a recognition that a life is not just made of grand events, but of a million mundane moments, and that even the dust we leave behind can be a testament to a love that refuses to let go. In this stifling parlor, surrounded by the symbols of death, the most humble substance imaginable becomes the most powerful anchor to a life that has passed. A soft, fuzzy ghost kept alive in a golden cage. The heavy, perfumed air of the Victorian parlor is violently torn apart, not by sound, but by a deafening, all-consuming roar. The delicate lint locket is ripped from your neck, its golden chain snapping as you are thrown backwards by an invisible, concussive fist. The world dissolves into chaos, a screaming, shuddering maelstrom of splintering wood, shattering glass, and twisting metal. The scent of lilies is instantly obliterated by the overpowering, choking smell of burnt sugar, ozone, and something horribly organic, like roasted meat. You are no longer in a house of mourning. You are in the belly of the Industrial Revolution, and it is devouring itself. You are in a cotton mill, and the very air you breathe has just turned to fire. This is the terrifying, apocalyptic flip side of Lint's story. Its terrifying power as a fuel for disaster. The air in the mill is, and always has been, a visible, tangible thing. It is a swirling, blizzard-like haze of cotton dust and lint, so thick you can taste its fuzzy sweetness on your tongue with every breath. It coats the massive, thundering looms in a soft, gray fur. It piles up and drifts along the base of the brick walls. It settles on the shoulders and hair of the workers, children and adults alike, who move through this storm like ghosts, their lungs steadily filling with the same material they are weaving into cloth. The danger is constant, a whispered fear among the workers. All it takes is a single spark. A faulty bearing in a machine overheats, creating a tiny, brilliant ember. A shoddy electrical connection, a new and terrifyingly unknown force in these old buildings spits an arc of blue-white light. Or perhaps a worker, desperate for a moment's respite and a drag of warmth, lights a pipe. That tiny point of heat, born from friction or folly, touches the suspended dust in the air. What happens next is not a fire. It is a volumetric explosion. The spark ignites a single, floating particle of lint. The heat from that microscopic fireball ignites the particles surrounding it, and the chain reaction propagates through the entire dust-filled atmosphere of the room at over 30 feet per second. The air itself becomes fuel. The pressure wave hits first, a solid wall of compressed air that pulverizes machinery and human bodies alike. Then comes the fireball, incinerating everything in its path. Finally, the vacuum left behind causes the entire structure to implode in on itself. The 1878 Washburn mill explosion in Minneapolis was one such catastrophe, where a dust ignition killed 18 workers and utterly destroyed the largest mill in the world. A stark and horrifying lesson in the physics of particulate matter. Historians and engineers still argue whether the primary cause of many of these mill disasters was the simple negligence of allowing dust to accumulate, or if a more complex interplay of static electricity, humidity, and the specific chemical composition of the cotton dust was to blame. In the grim aftermath, the investigators would wade through the terrible wreckage, and they would find a bizarre, quiet testament to the force of the blast. In sheltered corners, untouched by the fireball, they would find piles of lint that had been compressed by the pressure wave into strange, dense, felt-like tiles. It was as if the explosion itself had tried to clean up the very mess that caused it. In the years that followed, the mill owners, pressured by public outrage and new insurance requirements, instituted safety measures. And this is where we find a wonderfully quirky, utterly terrifying job title from the industrial age, the lint sniffer. This was a man, and it was always a man armed with nothing but a long hooked pole and a terrifyingly intimate knowledge of the mill's architecture, whose job was to crawl into the tight, inaccessible spaces between the floors and ceilings, the elevator shafts, and the ventilation ducts to find and remove the accumulated lint. He worked in absolute darkness, in suffocating heat, guided only by touch and smell, knowing that the very air around him could be moments from annihilation. He was a ghost hunter, seeking out the soft, silent specters of fluff that could summon hell itself. The mill is rebuilt, stronger, with better ventilation, with sprinkler systems. But the lint still gathers. It is the price of progress, the invisible enemy of industry. You, as a worker, return to your station, the memory of the explosion a fresh trauma. You look at the soft, snow-like drift of lint gathering under your machine with new eyes. It is no longer just dirt. It is potential energy. It is a sleeping dragon. Every time you sweep it up, you are not just cleaning, you are disarming a bomb. The gentle, floating motes catching the light from the high windows are no longer beautiful. They are ominous. The rhythmic thrum of the looms is no longer the sound of production. It is the sound of friction, of heat, of a constant, grinding risk. In this new age of industry, lint has revealed its true dual nature. It is the stuff of warm clothing and soft blankets, but it is also the stuff of fire and rubble, a reminder that even the most gentle and mundane things, when ignored and allowed to accumulate, can hold a terrifying explosive power. The deafening, concussive roar of the mill explosion fades, but it is not replaced by silence. It is replaced by a lower, more constant, earth-shaking thunder, the relentless, grinding percussion of artillery shells. The sweet, dusty smell of cotton is gone, burned away by the acrid stench of cordite, mud, rotting flesh, and chlorine gas. You are no longer in a factory, you are in a trench, a gash of mud and despair carved into the face of Europe. The world has gone mad, and the demand for everything, for bullets, for boots, for bandages, is insatiable. And in this new, horrific context, lint is once again transformed. It is no longer an industrial hazard or a sentimental relic. It is a lifeline. The very substance that could spontaneously combust in a mill is now, after a crucial process, one of the most critical medical supplies on the battlefield. You are a medic, or perhaps a soldier trained in first aid, and your hands, caked in mud and worse, are reaching for a sterilized lint bandage. The problem is sheer, overwhelming volume. The new weapons of war, high explosive shells, shrapnel, machine gun fire, create wounds of a scale and grotesquerie never before seen by medical science. Traditional rolls of gauze are useless against the gaping, mangled cavities these weapons inflict. What is needed is a dressing that can be packed into wounds, one that is highly absorbent, readily available, and can be produced on an industrial scale. The answer had been gathering in laundry baskets and dryer traps for centuries. Lint, specifically, a medical-grade version known as charpie or lint scrap, which was essentially linen or cotton cloth scraped into a soft, fluffy, wool-like mass of fibers. But in the desperate economy of total war, even household lint was considered. Historians still argue whether the official medical corps actually sanctioned the use of collected domestic lint, or if this was a desperate measure employed by overwhelmed field hospitals and civilian aid groups behind the lines, of grim improvisation born of pure necessity. The process of turning this most common of substances into a sterile wound dressing is a bizarre and meticulous one. In factories back home and in makeshift stations near the front, women and volunteers would spend hours scraping old sheets, shirts, and any available cotton or linen cloth with a blunt knife or a special tool called a lint scraper, creating piles of this vital fluffy material. This raw lint would then be subjected to sterilization, heated in ovens, treated with chemicals, or autoclaved under steam pressure to kill any bacteria before being shipped to the front in sealed packages. There's a wonderfully quirky, if dark, piece of trench lore that some soldiers believed lint bandages, made from the cloth of their own home country, French linen versus German cotton, for instance, had better absorbency or even healing properties. A small superstition clung to in the face of unimaginable horror. The reality was far more straightforward. It was soft, it was absorbent, and it was there. You are in a dugout, lit by a single, flickering lantern. The air trembles with each shell impact. Before you, a wounded man breathes in ragged, shallow gasps. The wound is a terrible thing, and your job is to pack it, to stem the bleeding and try to stave off infection. You open the sealed packet. The sterile lint inside is pristine, white, and soft, a shocking contrast to the mud and blood that surrounds you. You take a handful and begin to gently, firmly press it into the wound. It is a strange, intimate act. This material, which once might have been the dust from a parlor curtain or a workman's shirt, is now being used to plug a hole in a human being. It soaks up the blood, providing a clean matrix for clotting. In a world defined by taking things apart, by tearing flesh and shattering bone, this is a small, fragile act of putting something back together, of trying to make whole. The war ends, but the memory of this use for lint lingers in military field manuals and civilian first aid kits. For decades, the humble lint bandage becomes a symbol of makeshift care, of doing the best you can with what you have. It represents a colossal, global effort to mitigate suffering, to find use and purpose in even the most overlooked materials. In the quiet of your home, far from the sound of guns, the lint in your pocket or caught in the dryer filter carries a new, subconscious weight. It is not just dust. It is the ghost of a bandage, the echo of a desperate, life-saving measure. It is a reminder that in our darkest hours we look for salvation in the most ordinary of places, and that sometimes the stuff we casually discard can in the right hands become the very thing that holds a life together. The earth-shaking thunder of artillery and the desperate, medical urgency of the trenches recede, fading into a new, equally powerful but far more cheerful din. The sound of a jingle, a bright, optimistic tune played on a piano and backed by a smooth vocal chorus, pouring from the radio speaker in a sun-drenched, newly built suburban living room. The sense of credite and infection are replaced by the smell of fresh paint, polyester, and a roasting pot roast. The world has not just found peace. It has launched itself headlong into a new religion, consumerism, and you are its newest convert. You are a suburban homeowner, and you have just made the most exciting purchase of your life, an electric clothes dryer. It is a gleaming white, enameled marvel of modern convenience, a symbol of post-war prosperity that promises to liberate you from the archaic, time-consuming chore of hanging laundry on a line. But this miracle machine comes with a hidden, fuzzy cost, one that will fundamentally change your relationship with lint forever. You are about to become a mass producer. For centuries, lint was a slow, passive accumulation. It gathered in the seams of pockets. It was brushed from coats. It was swept from the floors of weaving rooms. Its generation was a quiet, almost geological process. The electric dryer changes everything. It is a lint factory, a hyper-efficient system designed to aggressively liberate fibers through a brutal combination of tumbling action and blistering heat. Your first load is a revelation. You open the door, and the warm, fluffy clothes are indeed miraculously dry. But then you look down. There, below the drum, is a small, sliding tray you'd barely noticed before. You pull it out, and you behold it, a perfect, soft, warm sheet of felted fuzz, a cohesive mat of fibers that once belonged to your towels, your socks, your children's play clothes. It is a startlingly large amount of material, produced in under an hour. This is lint on an industrial scale, happening right in your own utility room. This byproduct does not go unnoticed by the manufacturers. In fact, they turn it into a selling point. The advertisements in the glossy magazines show a smiling, impeccably dressed housewife effortlessly removing the lint screen, her expression one of serene satisfaction at a job well done. The message is clear: a clean lint screen is a sign of a well-run, modern home. It is evidence that you are using your amazing new appliance correctly. The act of cleaning the lint trap is framed not as a chore, but as a moment of miniaturized industrial efficiency, a satisfying little ritual of maintenance that proves you are a savvy consumer. Historians still argue whether the appliance companies intentionally designed these early dryers to be such prolific lint generators to sell more replacement clothing, or if it was simply an unanticipated side effect of the technology's ruthless efficiency, a debate that sits at the quirky intersection of corporate conspiracy and engineering oversight. And with the dryer comes a new piece of folklore, passed from neighbor to neighbor over the backyard fence. The dire warning of the fire hazard, the specter of the mill explosion, once a distant industrial tragedy, is now domesticated. It enters the home. Did you hear about the Smiths? Their dryer nearly caught fire. She never cleans the lint trap. This warning becomes a staple of suburban safety, right up there with looking both ways before crossing the street. It transforms the lint from a mere nuisance into a potential household villain, a sleepy dragon that must be appeased with regular offerings of its own discarded body. There is a wonderfully quirky piece of post-war cultural ephemera, the Linto contest, sponsored by a major appliance manufacturer in the late 1950s, which encouraged housewives to save their dryer lint and sculpt it into creative shapes, with prizes for the most artistic submission. It was a bizarre attempt to rebrand this waste product as a medium for creative domestic expression, a campaign that was, perhaps unsurprisingly, not repeated. You become an expert in the taxonomy of your own lint. You learn to read its composition. A load of blue jeans produces a stiff, denim blue felt. A load of towels yields a thick, plush, absorbent sheet of white. A load of your husband's work socks creates a grim, grayish amalgam that hints at the struggles of the daily grind. This lint is a diary of your family's life, a compressed, felted record of what you wore and when. You toss it in the trash without a second thought. This new, weekly harvest of fuzz, but its very existence is a miracle of modern living. That single, fluffy sheet represents hours of saved labor, of no longer being dependent on the weather, of having achieved a new level of control over your domestic environment. The dryer hums contentedly in the background, a symbol of progress and ease. And with every cycle it diligently produces the evidence of its own labor, a soft warm monument to the fact that every step forward, no matter how convenient, generates its own unique kind of dust, its own quiet constant harvest of the everyday. The cheerful, jingling advertisements and the comforting hum of the new dryer slowly warp the melody, twisting into a chorus of frantic, worried engineers and the sound of pencil scratching desperately on drafting paper. The sunny, suburban living room dissolves into a stark, fluorescent lit laboratory filled with the smell of hot metal, ozone, and singed cotton. You are no longer a blissful consumer. You are an engineer in the post-war boom. And your company's shiny new product, the electric clothes dryer, has a fatal, flaming flaw. The very machines meant to symbolize domestic safety and convenience are, with alarming frequency, turning into household infernos. The reports flood in, smoke pouring from utility rooms. Minor fires, a few total losses. The cause is never in doubt. It's the lint, the incredible, prolific volume of lint your machine is so efficient at creating, is being sucked into the heating element or the exhaust system, where it meets its destiny as a highly effective tinder. The marketing department is selling a dream, but you are staring at a nightmare, and your job is to fix it before the entire product line gets recalled, and your company's reputation goes up in, well, smoke. The initial designs were so focused on the mechanics of tumbling and heating that they treated lint as an afterthought, a minor inconvenience to be dealt with by the homeowner. But hope, as they say, is not a maintenance strategy. You and your team begin a crash course in the aerodynamics of fuzz. You install glass observation panels on prototype dryers and film the process in slow motion. It's mesmerizing and horrifying. You watch as a storm of liberated fibers is whipped into a frenzy by the spinning drum and the powerful airflow from the fan. This blizzard of lint doesn't just settle, it gets everywhere. It coats the heating coils. It clogs the narrow exhaust ducts. It forms dense, felted mats in the darkest recesses of the machines. Interior, each of these accumulations is a potential fire, waiting for one overworked heating cycle to ignite it. Historians and engineering archivists still argue whether the inclusion of a basic lint screen in the very first dryer models was a purposeful, if inadequate, safety feature, or if it was merely a coarse filter designed to protect the fan motor from debris with its fire suppression benefits being a happy accidental discovery made only after the machines were already in homes. The eureka moment doesn't come from a complex equation or a radical redesign. It comes from a simple, almost stupidly obvious question. What if we put the filter right there? You notice that the vast majority of the lint is carried by the main airflow exiting the drum. It's a river of hot, wet, fuzzy air. So, you decide to dam the river. You design a simple, slide-out mesh screen, and you place it directly in the path of this airflow, just before it reaches the heating element and the fan. The concept is brilliantly simple. Force all the air leaving the drum to pass through the screen. The mesh catches the vast majority of the lint, allowing the now cleaner air to pass through to be heated and recirculated or vented outside. It does not perfect some ultrafine particles will always get through, but it catches perhaps 95% of the problem. The lint trap is born. It's not a glamorous invention. It will never win a design award, but it is an absolute masterpiece of practical, life-saving engineering. There is a wonderfully quirky piece of corporate lore from one major appliance company that the head engineer, after the successful testing of the new lint trap prototype, was presented with a ceremonial fire extinguisher mounted on a plaque, a joke that undoubtedly killed in the lab, but would have baffled the marketing department. Implementing it is the next challenge. It has to be accessible to the user. It can't be a complicated tool requiring task, or people simply won't do it, hence the slide-out tray. It has to be obvious, hence its placement right on the front of the machine, often with a bright, friendly warning label. The marketing department, once terrified, now seizes on this flaw-turned feature. They don't hide the lint trap, they advertise it. With our new, easy clean safety filter, it becomes a symbol of the company's commitment to safety. The act of cleaning the lint trap is no longer just maintenance. It is a ritual of responsibility, a small, weekly pact between the homeowner and the machine to keep the dream of convenience from literally burning down the house. You finally step back from the prototype. The smell of singed cloth replaced by the smell of success. The machine runs a full cycle. You pull the tray. There it is, a perfect, warm sheet of captured danger. It's a satisfying feeling, like defusing a bomb. This simple, mesh screen transforms the relationship with the machine. The dryer is no longer a mysterious, magical box. It is a partner in a process, one that requires a small, but crucial contribution from its owner. That slide-out tray is a contract. It says, I will make your life easier, but you must perform this one simple task to keep us both safe. It is a monument to the idea that the most elegant solutions are often the simplest, and that progress isn't just about creating new things, but about responsibly managing the messy, fuzzy, and often dangerous consequences of our own ingenuity. The sterile, fluorescent-lit engineering lab fades, its hum replaced by the gentle, focused silence of an artist's studio. But this is no ordinary studio. The smell is not of turpentine or wet clay, but of fabric softener and the faint, static electric scent of warm, dry air. The gleaming white dryer, once the subject of engineering panic, now sits in the corner like a dutiful assistant, its sole purpose to produce not dry clothes, but raw material. You are no longer an engineer, you are an artist, and your medium, spread across your worktable in soft, billowing piles of color, is dryer lint. The very substance that engineers worked so hard to contain and dispose of has become your pigment, your clay, your entire raison d'etre. You are part of a small, peculiar modern art movement that has looked into the trash and seen a masterpiece waiting to be pulled out, one fluffy handful at a time. Your palette is a taxonomy of domestic life. Here, a pile of brilliant white, fluffy as a cloud, harvested from a load of bathroom towels. There, a deep, solemn blue heap from a cycle of well-worn jeans. A vibrant crimson mound comes from a single, unfortunate red sock that bled its dye onto a load of whites. A laundry disaster transformed into artistic opportunity. You don't paint with the lint, you build with it. Your tools are simple, tweezers, a spray bottle filled with a weak solution of water and glue, and an immense amount of patience. You work like a pointillist, but instead of dots of paint, you are placing individual tufts of lint, building up form and texture layer by painstaking layer. The process is meditative, a slow dance of accumulation that is the absolute opposite of the dryer's violent, industrial production. Historians and art critics still argue whether this lint art is a legitimate innovative folk art form that challenges our definition of materials, or merely a kitschy novelty, a quirky sidebar in the history of contemporary art that is more focused on its bizarre medium than on any artistic merit. Your current piece is a portrait, not of a person, but of the very machine that made it possible, a hyperrealistic, textural rendering of a dryer's lint screen, perfectly rendered in the very material it collects. It's a meta masterpiece, a circle of creation and reuse that would make any philosopher smile. The irony is not lost on you. You are using the waste product of convenience culture to create something that requires immense, inconvenient amounts of time and focus. There's a wonderfully quirky subculture within this niche art form, the lintor, an artist who works exclusively with their own family's lint, creating a visual diary of their domestic life. 1 month's output might be a gray, melancholy landscape reflecting a period of work uniforms and stressful days. The next might be a bright, colorful abstract piece born from a week of children's play clothes and vibrant holiday outfits. Their art is literally made from the fabric of their lives. The challenges are unique. Conservation is a constant worry. How do you protect a sculpture made of dust from, well, dust? How do you prevent it from being devoured by moths or disintegrating under its own weight? Some artists encase their finished works in thick resin, forever suspending the fuzz in a clear amber-like tomb. Others accept the ephemeral nature of their medium, photographing their work extensively before it inevitably succumbs to time and gravity, making the art not the object itself, but the act of its creation. You exhibit your work at small, local galleries and craft fairs, where people approach with a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. They lean in close, their eyes widening when they realize what they're looking at is that. They begin, and you just smile and nod. The conversation always turns to their own dryers, their own lint traps. You have given them a new way to see the most discarded substance in their home. As you work, carefully placing a tuft of gray fleece lint to create a shadow, you think about the journey this material has taken. It was once the cause of catastrophic explosions, the stuffing for Victorian lockets of grief, the bandage for the wounds of war, and the feared enemy of engineers. Now, in your hands, it is something peaceful. It is something beautiful. It is a quiet rebellion against disposability, a proof that meaning can be found anywhere, even in the bottom of the dryer. The act of creation is a form of reconciliation with the machine itself. You are not just an artist, you are a translator, taking the language of efficiency and convenience and rewriting it into a poem of texture and color. The dryer finishes its cycle with a loud thunk. You open the door, not to retrieve the clothes, but to harvest the new batch of raw material. You pull the lint screen and look at the fresh, perfect sheet of felted fuzz. To anyone else, it's trash, but to you, it's a blank canvas, waiting to tell its next story. The earthy, fabric softener scent of the artist's studio vanishes, not with a sound, but with an absolute, suffocating silence. The gentle piles of colorful lint are instantly swept away, replaced by a view of impossible blackness, punctuated by the brilliant, untwinkling pinpricks of a million stars. The gravity that held you to your studio chair is gone. You are weightless, drifting in the confined, humming capsule of the International Space Station. The air smells of recycled oxygen, antiseptic, and a faint, metallic tang. Here, 250 miles above the Earth, the most advanced creation of humanity floats in the void, and within it, a familiar, mundane problem persists. Lint still exists, but in microgravity. It doesn't settle, it conquers. It is no longer a substance to be sculpted or a nuisance to be trapped. It is a persistent, floating ghost in the machine, and its management is a matter of life, death, and multi-billion-dollar engineering. Every action up here generates debris. The astronauts, wearing their cotton-based clothing, are constant shedders. The towels, the Velcro patches, the experiment padding, everything sheds microscopic fibers. But on Earth, gravity is the great janitor. It pulls this particulate down to the floor to be swept away. In orbit, there is no down. The lint becomes a permanent, suspended aerosol within the station's atmosphere. It floats, it drifts into sensitive instrumentation, it coats surfaces, it gets inhaled. The environmental control systems are equipped with sophisticated filters, but they can't catch everything. This isn't the charming, felted sheet from your dryer. This is a pervasive, invisible mist of human detritus, and it is a serious problem. Historians and space archivists still argue whether the early NASA engineers fully anticipated the challenge of particulate matter in a closed zero-gravity environment, or if it was one of those thousands of tiny mundane problems that only revealed themselves when humans actually moved in. The protocols for dealing with it are a blend of high-tech and profoundly low-tech solutions. The air filtration systems run constantly. They hum a background symphony of the station, slowly pulling the floating lint out of the air. But the astronauts themselves are the first line of defense. Cleaning in space is not about sweeping. It's about hunting. You might be tasked with a weekly lint roundup, floating through the modules with a handheld vacuum cleaner specially designed for microgravity. Its nozzle like a tiny mouth greedily sucking the floating ghosts of fibers from the air. You have to be meticulous, chasing down every visible speck, because if you miss it, it will just drift into a vent or a computer fan, potentially causing a malfunction. There is a wonderfully quirky piece of astronaut lore, the tale of a particularly large and cohesive ball of lint that formed in a quiet corner of a sleep station. It was dubbed Wilson, after the volleyball in Castaway, and for weeks, astronauts would gently bat it back and forth during off hours, a fuzzy, weightless pet that was eventually, reluctantly, captured and bagged during a major cleaning cycle. The greatest fear is fire. The memory of the industrial mill explosions on Earth is a haunting specter here. A concentrated cloud of lint, rich with oxygen in the station's atmosphere, would be the perfect fuel for a disaster. A single electrical spark in the wrong place could ignite a fireball that would race through the modules, consuming oxygen and producing toxic gases in an environment with nowhere to run. Because of this, the lint isn't just captured, it is treated as hazardous waste. It is carefully sealed in plastic bags, compressed, and stored with other trash to eventually be loaded into a departing Cygnus or Dragon cargo spacecraft, which is then deliberately directed to burn up on re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. It is a fittingly dramatic end for such a humble substance, a fiery funeral in the upper atmosphere, its constituent atoms scattered across the globe. You float past a filter, its surface visibly gray with captured fibers. You understand now that this is more than just cleaning. It is a form of planetary hygiene. You are curating the environment, protecting the fragile bubble of life from the slow, insidious creep of your own shedding. The lint is a tangible reminder of your physical connection to the world below, a constant, floating stream of evidence that you are a biological creature in a mechanical world. It is the dust of Earth, and you have brought it with you to the stars. As you look out the cupola window at the breathtaking curve of the planet below, you see a world wrapped in clouds, and for a moment, you imagine the entire atmosphere is just a larger version of the station's air, filled with its own drifting history of dust and lint and life. Up here, the most mundane chore is magnified into a vital ritual, a dance with the tiny fuzzy particles that remind you that even in the pristine void of space, humanity cannot help but leave a little piece of itself behind. The profound, life-sustaining silence of the space station is abruptly severed by the low, paranoid hum of a server farm and the frantic clicking of a keyboard. The breathtaking view of Earth is replaced by the glow of a single computer monitor in a darkened basement room, the walls papered with printouts, red string diagrams, and grainy, circled photographs. The scent of recycled oxygen is gone, replaced by the smell of cold pizza, stale coffee, and the electric tang of overheating electronics. You are no longer an astronaut. You are a digital detective, a connoisseur of coincidence, an archivist of the arcane. You have peeled back the veneer of reality, and what you have found, lurking in the shadows of every laundry room and behind the official statements of every government, is the truth. Lint is not what they say it is. It is the center of the greatest, most deliberately overlooked conspiracy in human history. You are piecing together the puzzle of the Great Lint cover-up, and the evidence is everywhere. For those with the eyes to see, it starts with simple, unanswerable questions. Why do all dryer manufacturers use the same basic design for the lint trap? Is it for efficiency, or is it to standardize the collection process? Why are we, the public, so diligently trained to empty these traps into the trash, a system that conveniently aggregates this material for easy acquisition? You've seen the municipal garbage trucks, but have you ever followed one to its final destination? The official story is the landfill, but you've seen the classified freight manifests, the unmarked trucks leaving waste management facilities in the dead of night, heading not to sprawling dumps, but to anonymous, windowless warehouses in unmarked industrial parks. The scale of the operation is staggering. Think of it, every household in the developed world, producing multiple grams of lint per week. That's thousands of tons per year, a resource stream of pure, refined cellulose and polymer fibers, all freely given, all meticulously collected. Where does it all really go? Historians and economists still argue whether any government has ever seriously considered the strategic value of stockpiled raw materials, including textiles. But the leap to a clandestine lint stockpile remains firmly in the realm of the fringe. The theories on its use are where the real artistry begins. The most popular one is Project Softfoot, a supposed black-budget program to recycle the nation's lint into a ultra-absorbent, sound-dampening felt for stealth operations. The boots of Special Forces operatives, the lining of spy plane compartments, the walls of black site interrogation rooms, all silently padded with the collected fuzz of a million laundry cycles. There's a wonderfully quirky, deeply paranoid online manifesto that claims the iconic fuzzy look of 1980s rock bands was actually a CIA psyop to normalize the appearance of lint-based apparel, making future operatives blending in while wearing felted body armor less conspicuous. The document is a masterpiece of connected dots that don't actually exist, a reminder that any pattern can be found if you look at enough noise. Then there's the more existential fear, lint as a vector. What if it's not about the material itself, but what's on it? Your lint is a biomolecular archive of your life. It contains your skin cells, your pet's dander, traces of your diet, pollen from your area, and chemical residues from your soaps and detergents. In the wrong hands, it's a forensic gold mine. A black bag team doesn't need to break into your house to get a DNA sample. They just need to intercept your trash on collection day. A centralized lint analysis program could, in theory, map the health, movements, and habits of the entire population without ever needing a warrant. A sudden spike in antihistamine residues in a zip code could predict allergy season sales. Anomalous chemical compounds in a suburban neighborhood's lint could flag a homemade explosives operation. The data is all there, swirling in our dryers, waiting to be read. The conspiracy isn't that they're collecting it, it's that they've convinced us it's worthless, ensuring we'll never think to protect it. You sit back from your computer, the glow of the screen the only light in the room. The hum of the computer fan is the sound of revelation. You look at the world differently now. The innocuous act of pulling the lint from the trap feels charged with new meaning. Are you disposing of waste, or are you feeding the beast? The simplicity of lint is its perfect camouflage. Its sheer mundanity is the greatest secret-keeping device ever invented. No one questions it. No one investigates it. It is the ultimate hidden-in-plain-sight operation. The government isn't just stockpiling lint. They've stockpiled our disbelief. They've weaponized boredom. As you drift towards sleep, the theories swirl in your mind like the fibers in a dryer drum. The felted boots of secret soldiers. The DNA databases built from dust. The silent, sprawling warehouses filled to the ceiling with the soft gray collected evidence of our entire lives. It's the perfect conspiracy. It doesn't require a cover-up because the truth is too boring for anyone to ever believe. The paranoid hum of the conspiracy theorist's server farm recedes, its frantic energy dissipating like static on a radio dial finally finding a clear signal. The dark, paper-strewn basement dissolves into the bright, clean, and optimistic air of a modern materials lab. The smell of cold pizza is replaced by the scent of ozone, warm plastic, and the earthy, petrichor smell of something new being born. The swirling conspiracy theories, while entertaining, are just noise. The real, Verifiable truth about Lint's future is far more fascinating, and it's happening right now. You are no longer a digital sleuth. You are a materials scientist, an innovator, and you are holding the future in your hand. It is a small, lightweight brick, surprisingly sturdy, and it is made entirely from compressed, treated dryer lint. The journey of this substance, from prehistoric cave dust to industrial hazard to artistic medium, is now culminating in its most practical and revolutionary role yet. As a building block for a more sustainable world, the problem is one of sheer volume. Landfills across the globe are groaning under the weight of our waste, and a significant portion of that is synthetic textiles, polyester, nylon, acrylic that will outlast civilizations in their inert, plastic form. But what if this waste stream could be dammed and diverted? What if the lint trap, instead of being a destination, could be a source? Your work focuses on this very question. The process is complex but elegant. The collected lint, a mixed matrix of natural and synthetic fibers, is first sterilized and then shredded. It is then mixed with a natural, non-toxic binding agent. Some researchers are experimenting with soybean-based resins, others with a mycelium slurry derived from mushroom roots. This mixture is then heated and pressed under immense pressure into molds, creating sturdy, lightweight panels and bricks. Historians and environmental scientists still argue whether the transition to a circular economy will be driven by such grassroots material innovations or require top-down governmental mandates. But the potential of waste stream architecture is undeniable. The properties of these lint composites are remarkable. They have excellent natural insulation properties. Both thermal and acoustic. A house built with lint bricks would be incredibly quiet and energy efficient. They are lightweight, reducing the carbon footprint of transportation compared to concrete or traditional brick. And, perhaps most poetically, they are fire-resistant. Through specific treatments and the nature of compression, the material that was once a terrifying fire hazard can be transformed into a barrier that slows the spread of flames. There's a wonderfully quirky project from a Scandinavian design collective that created a series of elegant, sound-absorbing wall panels for a concert hall using lint collected from the laundry facilities of the city's hotels. The panels were dyed using natural pigments derived from food waste, creating a stunning, modeled aesthetic that literally echoed the vibrant life of the city itself, a symphony composed from its dust. You walk through a prototype structure, a small shed built entirely from these recycled composite panels. The walls are smooth and warm to the touch. It is silent inside, the chaotic noises of the outside world muted by the fuzzy, felted density of the walls. You run your hand along the surface, and you are touching the ghosts of 1,000 t-shirts, 1,000,000 towels, the discarded fibers of an entire community, now given a new, permanent, and purposeful form. This isn't about creating a novelty, it's about redefining waste. The lint in your dryer is no longer an end product, it is a precursor. It is a resource waiting for its next life. This vision of the future isn't one of gleaming, minimalist metal and glass, but of something softer, quieter, and woven from the very fabric of our past. It is a future built on fuzz. And as this thought settles, the pace of our story begins to slow. The frantic energy of mills and trenches and conspiracy theories finally bleeding away. The sharp edges of history soften. The vivid images of Roman laundrymen and Victorian mourners begin to blur at the edges, fading into a gentle, monochrome haze. The constant, low-grade anxiety of modern life, the buzz of the phone, the ping of the notification, the endless to-do list, it all seems to recede, pulled back by a tide of immense, quiet patience. You have followed the thread of this most humble substance through the entire tapestry of human civilization, and you see now that it was never just lint. It was always a record, a quiet, persistent, accumulating record of who we are, what we wear, how we live, and what we leave behind. It is the softest of archives. It asks for nothing. It simply is, and it will continue to be, long after the dryers have fallen silent and our current cities are just layers in the earth. It is the eternal fuzz. So let the images go now. Let the facts and the dates and the arguments drift away like fibers on a gentle current. There is no more need to follow the thread. You can just be. The story is over. The history is told. All that's left is the soft, quiet dark, and the gentle, weightless feeling of finally letting go. The frantic chase of progress, the pounding drums of industry, the whispered fears of conspiracy. They all melt away now, leaving nothing but a profound and soothing silence in their wake. The journey is complete. The story of lint, from its prehistoric beginnings to its futuristic potential, has unspooled itself fully, and now the reel is empty, clicking softly to a stop. There is no more past to uncover, no more future to anticipate. There is only this moment, this perfect, weighted stillness. Your breath comes slow and deep, a tide washing in and out on a shore of absolute calm. The weight of the blanket is a gentle embrace, the pillow a soft cloud cradling your head. Every muscle, every nerve ending, has let go of its daily tension, surrendering to a heaviness that is not fatigue, but peace. The world outside this room, with all its noise and demand, has ceased to exist. There is only the darkness behind your eyelids, a vast and comfortable void. You are safe. You are still. You are deeply, utterly, and completely at rest. Let the silence hold you. Let the darkness carry you. There is nothing more to do, nothing more to think, just adrift.